Good morning, everyone, and hello to all our friends in Perth. It's been a long time between drinks, and I'm looking forward to getting home at some stage in the near future. Greenvale is a new undertaking for me. I joined the board 3 months ago after undertaking some pretty intensive due diligence. And what I discovered about Greenvale was that it had one of the most interesting histories of any company that I've ever known. And I'll give you that history in just a few sentences. It is one of the oldest listed resource companies on the ASX. It first listed just almost 50 years ago, back in 1971. For the past 40 years, it's only owned the one project. Until recently, it picked up a gold project in the US of no consequence. But for 40 years, it's owned the Alpha Torbenite project. And back in the 1980s, Greenvale was a superstar. It was trading with a big market capitalisation, had a share price of over $6. I met two guys here yesterday who bought shares in Greenvale at $6. And 35 years later, they still don't see the humour in that. But like all booms, that boom faded away and Greenvale faded away with the boom. And pretty much for the last 25 to 30 years, it's been in mothballs. One thing that came out of my due diligence on Greenvale was that I firmly believe the Alpha Torbenite project has reached a stage where it's ready to be developed. There's a huge amount of data on it, and the message I want to get across to you today is that we are ready to get this project going. I'm the only guy with two pages of disclaimer, I don't know why. So, corporate summary. My monitor's not working here, so I'll have to look at the big picture. 340 million shares on issue. Share price is a bit higher than that now, and our market cap will be just north of 20 million. We have 4.8 million in the bank, and our top 20 shareholders own 60% of the company. The board owns a third of the company, and the three directors are the three top shareholders of the company. So it's pretty tight. Is there any chance I can get the monitor going here? So the board is the old Pilbara team, but I've been working with Tony Leibowitz and Alan Boyes for more than 30 years on various projects, various companies. We know each other extremely well. We've brought two young guns on board. Marion Bush has been working on the Georgina project for the last 18 months, pulling that together. And Cameron Boyes is right-hand man to Alan and myself, and he's driving the commercial side of the Alpha project. The Alpha Torbenite project, located 500 kilometres west of Rockhampton, discovered in 1939, it has an 80-year history of exploration and testing of every description. It's a very rare deposit. It's the only commercial torbenite project in Australia. There were some, but they were mined out in the 19th century. They were in the Sydney Basin. Torbenite is neither an oil shale nor a coal. It's a unique mineral in its own right. It has an extremely high hydrocarbon content, up to 650 litres per tonne of torbenite, and that's comprised of 60% bitumen hydrocarbons and 40% light crude oil hydrocarbons. The torbenite has the potential to produce three high-value, high-quality products: bitumen, light crude, which is a precursor to diesel, and the real kicker here is activated carbon, which I'll talk about in a minute. Plus, it produces its own gas to keep the production plant running. The bitumen market, I was very surprised to learn when I started looking at Alpha that Australia imports all its bitumen. Up until 2007, Australia did produce its own bitumen from various refineries around the country. But since 2007, those refineries have gradually been closing down to the extent now where we do not produce any of our own bitumen nor diesel, all imported from Southeast Asian mega refineries. The Queensland bitumen market is approximately 100,000 tonne a year out of an Australian total of 800,000 tonne a year. There is export possibilities with bitumen. Indonesia and New Zealand also import all their bitumen from mega refineries, and there is great potential to export cold pelletised bitumen into those markets for use in remote locations. Historical test results of the alpha torbenite bitumen exceed Australian standards. We already have customers lined up for bitumen. In fact, one of the customers is supplying laboratory services for our bulk sampling program, which is about to commence shortly. The real kicker here is the activated carbon market. Not many people know about it or understand it, but activated carbon is one of the world's fastest growing commodities, currently worth over $5 billion US annually and growing at a rate of 10% per annum. It is the frontline choice for emissions purification, and it has excellent absorption properties of organic and inorganic purities and odours in air, gas and water. It's used globally in all types of water purification, everything from aquatic centres purifying your swimming water, through to drinking water, desalination plants, wastewater, stormwater, and through to sewage plants. It's used in almost every industry, any industry that emits water or gas these days are regulated and they are required to purify their emissions. And frontline choice is activated carbon. Alpha torbenite produces a high quality activated carbon due to its high porosity. After the hydrocarbons are extracted from the torbenite, we're left with a highly porous, mechanically strong charcoal. Very low in impurities. That's the other feature of the alpha torbenite. Very low sulphur. It's formed in a freshwater environment. Very low impurities. There aren't many sources of high quality activated carbon in the world. Charcoal is coconut charcoal is one, but that's not a source that can grow rapidly unless suddenly someone plants massive plantations of coconut palms. It's mainly a cottage industry, but for us, that market is it's potentially worth hundreds of millions a year. Alpha's had a mighty exploration history. It's been explored intensely from really 1940 through to about the early 90s. The last major study done on alpha was in 1994. The University of Kentucky ran a study on alpha's activated carbon potential, very positive study. Last year, Greenvale appointed SRK as project manager to take on a data review and run a scoping study. And that scoping study was completed early this year. Since I've taken over running the company, I've appointed SRK as our technical managers to drive the Alpha project forward. We're currently building a pilot scale retort, which will be going into the asphalt laboratory on the Gold Coast here. And SRK will be managing the technical side of every step of that process. The historical drilling at Alpha comprises about 68 vertical diamond holes. It's been intensively drilled. The structure and the geology are well understood. A lot of the drilling is a bit old to use as a JORC to derive a JORC 2012 resource. The JORC code doesn't treat old drilling kindly, so we've got a drill program ahead of us, starting very early in the new year. The one thing about the Turbinite project is the geology is very simple. Any first year geology student could understand it, and I'm sure most people here could. The complexity with Turbinite and the cannel coals of bituminous coal, is in the chemistry. But the extraction of the hydrocarbons, the extraction of the activated carbon are all very simple processes. Torbenite is unique. It's formed in a freshwater environment. I guess think of broad-scale marshy swamps where algae accumulates over geological time, several million years. Those swamps are subsequently filled with overburden and ultimately compacted to form the torbenite. The hydrocarbon in torbenite is entirely formed from the algae, and that's what gives it its purity. The torbenite is overlain by and underlain by cannel coal, which is a bituminous coal. The lower cannel coal does have economic possibilities subject to our feasibility work. The torbenite zone's approximately 3 k's by 2 k's. It's about 5 metres deep on the eastern side. It dips 2 degrees to the west, and along its western margin it reaches a maximum depth of 50 metres. A very simple mining process, open cut mining, strip mining, same as they use for shallow mineral sands and shallow coal deposits, whereby 100-metre wide strips mined and then progressively backfilled from the next strip, and rehabilitation occurs as mining proceeds. The torbenite's not drilled out. There are extension possibilities to the southwest, and we'll be drilling those very early in the new year. The retort process for processing the torbenite is very straightforward. Retort technology has been around since the cavemen. They used retorts in the Bronze Age, 3,000 years BC, and really just a big oven heated to 600 degrees. The bitumen or the bitumen and crude oil hydrocarbons are released at 350 and 600 degrees respectively. They go into a distillation tower where they're separated. The gases put off by the torbenite are recirculated. They're scrubbed, recirculated and used to repower the torbenite. And the spent shale is then steam washed, very hot steam, cleaned up and is saleable as activated carbon. There are additional refining processes that can be brought in to upgrade the crude oil to diesel and upgrade the bitumen to customer specification products. So starting in January, we've got a big bulk sampling program going on. We're going to collect 3 by 1 tonne samples from each of the coal and torbenite layers. Pilot scale retort testing is underway for process design and product specification. And simultaneous with the bulk sampling, we'll be moving in a diamond rig. We initially 10 holes planned. That could easily be expanded to up to 20 holes. We're aiming to have this project in pre-feasibility by mid-June 2021. And we've got a very tight line, but we're aiming to have our offtake partners in place and final feasibility by the end of 2021. So very tight time frame, but because the project's so advanced, because it's so well understood, we don't have to drill holes that aren't going to hit their target, apart from down the southeast possibly. So we can directly get stuck into this. We have a management team that knows how to make these things work, and we'll be giving it our very best. I haven't spoken about Georgina today. We're held up a little bit on Georgina. It's a wonderful project, but we have 9 tenements applied for, 7 granted, and 2 of the key tenements are subject to native title meetings, and we haven't been able to get those meetings on simply because of COVID. The Indigenous communities have required to be protected, and so they haven't been holding meetings. We can't get the tenements granted until we've met with the Indigenous groups and discussed a deal with them. We don't have any reason to believe we won't get those tenements granted, but they are key tenements, so we're holding back on work at Georgina, apart from aerial geophysics, which we've started a modest program there, and we'll continue with that, building up the data in layers. But it's something for discussion in 2021. With the last 2 tenements granted, we can get on the ground and really get stuck into it. But for the moment, Alpha's going to occupy all our time. So just a quick summary, micro cap, it's only capped at around 20 million. I haven't had too many companies capped at that price for too long. This will be no exception. Management team knows what they're doing. Near-term production at Alpha, we believe it's a real possibility. And Georgina's a potential for a large iron, copper, gold. We'll see what happens there in the future. So thank you very much for your time. And I guess I'm going to get a few questions. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks, Neil. We do have a couple of questions just in from that text line that Paul mentioned before. So the first question is, how far down the processing chain would you go with this project? In terms of, obviously developing bitumen, you sort of mentioned there's further steps you can refine that product to.
Yeah, well, that'll be determined in a feasibility study. We really need to get our product specifications from the bulk sampling and the pilot scale retort testing. We do have product specifications from historical laboratory testing, but you can't go to your customers with those 40-year-old results. We need to actually hand them physical product. And they'll determine how far the product needs to be refined. I'd expect that the light crude will have to put in a hydro desulfidation plant and produce diesel. Diesel's readily saleable anywhere, and that would be a significant upgrade. Bitumen, I'm not sure. The clients that we're speaking to are looking for a whole range of products, and that's something they don't get from imported bitumen. They get the one product that comes in heated tankers. Activated carbon, look, early days there's so many uses for activated carbon and so many specifications. We really have to get inside that market, and we are working hard on that now.
Fabulous. Now, the next question is, can you give us a bit of an idea of the commercial scale? Like you've got a vague idea or a pretty good idea, I suppose, of how big the resource is in terms of what you might be producing if all comes to pass.
Yeah, the size of the torbenite unit is around 7 million tonnes. We know that. It's not JORC compliant, so you can't hold me to that. But we've got enough data to know that area in pink that was up on the slide is around 7 million tonnes. We think it's probably half as big again there's only 3 drill holes into that southern section. So we're planning it to be about a 10 million tonne project. The retorts are very cheap to build, and we could build a 100 tonne an hour one, which is 700,000 tonne a year. We could build a 50 tonne an hour one or a 200 tonne an hour one. It will depend on how our marketing goes. The indications to us are that there is a global shortage of activated carbon. The indications to us are that there's a big market for our bitumen, potentially around 100,000 tonne a year, possibly. And diesel, you could produce as much diesel as you wanted in Australia. You can sell that anywhere. So I'm guessing around 700,000 tonne a year is probably where it'll sit. That's where SRK sat the scoping study.
Yep.
And based on the numbers, they produced bottom line figures, and they suggested that the project would probably produce $1 billion over 10 years. But if we upgrade the products, it'll be producing a lot more than that.
Okay, that's good. That gives us a good idea. Just you mentioned those retorts, and it ties into that third question. You said they're sort of a little bit off the shelf almost. What sort of capex for a 100 tonne per hour retort? What are we looking at there?
Well, again, I have to rely on SRK. I've never built a retort. I've never seen one, actually. They're just a big oven. They only heat up to 600 degrees. They're not pressurised. They can't be pressurised, otherwise you'd be building a bomb. So they just operate like your oven at home.
Yep.
At atmospheric pressure. SRK tell me to make a 100 tonne an hour retort will be somewhere around the $5 million mark. That's not a lot of money for this scale of project. Where the money comes in is in the value add products, putting in a hydro desulfidization plant to make diesel, for example, from the light crude. upgrading the bitumen to higher specs. They're more sophisticated. Those refineries can be quite expensive. I can't put a number on it, but it wouldn't surprise me if the whole thing was around 50 million.
Oh, terrific. Well, that seems quite reasonable.
It does. It's compared to some. We raised 300 million to fund Pilbara's mine, so 50 billion should be easy. We're raising 150 mil to do Bardoc's mine, so yeah, it's not a lot, and there's no pre-strip. The torbenite occurs at surface, so that's all cheap.
It does look like easy mining. So.
It does, yeah.
Well, look, June 2021 doesn't seem too long to wait if you've been in the stock for the last 50 years. So that should be a really interesting study to see all the numbers come out on that. So yeah. Well done. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Neil.